All right, my beautiful people, let's call this episode 46, of the Athletic Philosopher podcast. I am your humble host, Jordan Goldstein, former university professor in sport history, philosophy, sociology, little psychology. Few things happened at the academy where I just don't want to be there. And they don't really want me there either, which is totally fine because we're doing so many better things now in the world of fitness coaching, life coaching, endurance training coaching, helping athletes and individuals reach out towards their true potential through a proper understanding of sports and orienting them properly within the fabric and tapestry of our lives. And I'm very excited about today's topic because we're going to weave in a whole bunch of interesting things. And this is inspired by another fellow traveler on social media, my friend, my teammate, someone who I coach, someone who I am inspired by, Big Charlie Schumann. Big Shoe. This guy, legend. He just took down Ironman 70.3 Muscle Man up in New York State a few weeks after becoming a brand new father. So just mazel tov on your incredible race, Charlie. It's awesome to watch you grow as a big man in this sport. Charlie is for real the big man on campus. He was a walk-on at Penn State playing the offensive line. And he might be one of the biggest people you'll ever see doing an endurance competition, towering over the field at 6'9", but lean and fit and athletic and ferocious, 6'9". And he tagged me earlier this morning with a post about something that's going viral in the sports world. So we're going to try to blend in what Big Shoe alerted me to and asked for my thoughts on. So I said, hey, I'll just record a pod today. But I also want to thread that with a very deep concept from the book that I'm reading right now and leading for our tribal book club, The Game by Ken Dryden. And I want to connect both of those things to something else I was prompted, I think, to do, which was share, communicate, and start to articulate and document my actual philosophy on sport that is deeply historically, theologically, and philosophically rooted. So we're going to try to do all those things today. So strap on. Here we go. So what was I prompted to talk about? What did Charlie want my opinion on? Well, there's a video going around of world number one golfer Scottie Scheffler addressing the media for quite some time in advance of the Open Championship. Side note, the Open Championship, one of the most romantic of all sporting competitions in the entire world, the oldest golf championship, going all the way back to the days where a belt was given out to the winner. And in the very first, iterations of the Open Championship, that was either old Tom Morris or Tom Morris Jr. Really interesting stuff. And this video is going around for, I think, all of the right reasons and is provoking a lot of really intriguing observations about the world of elite sports and why do them, and where does the motivation, where does the reward come from? So if you haven't seen this sort of 5-minute clip of Scottie Scheffler, I'm going to try to link it in the show notes for you to take a look at. But in essence, what Scottie Scheffler was communicating is almost like the emptiness or the hollowness of the nature of athletic victory itself. He's talking about, why do I want to show up and win all these big tournaments like the Masters and the Open Championship? Why have I worked so hard and so long to scale to the top of this mountain when every single time I win a tournament, it's this fleeting feeling. It's this fleeting triumph. Like the long-lasting consequences of the victory don't come through the victory itself. And let me just pull out a few intriguing quotes here from, I had to restart my computer, so I don't even have the notes. Look at this guy. He's just totally winging it. I love it. I absolutely Love it. So give me a minute. I'm going to pull up the Scottie Scheffler transcript here, and we'll just take a few quick quotes from this, again, 5 minutes, basically like a monologue. All right, quoting Scottie Scheffler. It feels like you work your whole life to celebrate winning a tournament for a few minutes. It only lasts a few minutes, that euphoric feeling. To win the Byron Nelson Championship at home, I literally worked my entire life to become good at golf, to have an opportunity to win that tournament. And you win it, get to celebrate, hug my family, my sisters are there. It's such an amazing moment. And it's like, okay, now, what are we going to eat for dinner? Life goes on. What's the point? Why do I want to win this tournament so bad? That's something that I wrestle with on a daily basis. Showing up at the Masters every year, it's like, why do I want to win this golf tournament so badly? Why do I want to win the Open Championship so badly? I don't know. Because if I win, it's going to be awesome for 2 minutes. Then we're going to get to the next week, and it's, hey, you won 2 majors this year. How important is it for you to win the FedEx Cup playoffs? And we're back here again. Right? And this is just so alive for me. And it hits upon an important theme that I often talk about with our athletes on Team Tribal, trying to properly contextualize why we train, why we do the races. And, for Scottie Scheffler, he has this external reason. It's like money, fame, status, career, legacy, opportunity. But for somebody like me, and for a lot of the people on the team who have, like other jobs, and the training is really this add-on to our lives, like, why would we similarly, like Scottie Scheffler is talking about, put in all this time and this effort to then go and do something where the payoff that we're supposed to care the most about, which is like the outcome, which in a race context is like crossing the finish line, why does that just dissolve? Why does that just dissolve so quickly and so viscerally right in front of us? And this goes all the way back to the ancient Greeks. So we're going to start our threading right now. In the ancient Olympics, right, the most prestigious of all of the ancient athletic festivals, like there were numerous athletic festivals. There were the 4 big ones, but there are also these minor ones. And what did the winners get at the Olympics? Certainly when they got home, they were showered with all those external rewards, riches, job for life, like never having to pay for a meal, all the olive oil that you could want. So there were these external rewards, but they weren't from the Olympics themselves. They were add-ons. Think about it like, an athlete makes a salary, but like a pro athlete makes a salary, but they're able to make a lot more money sometimes in endorsement deals, right? So it's like those endorsement deals enrich them. Maybe the salary's not so great. So what did the Olympians get? They got one thing. They got a natural prize. They got an olive wreath crown that went on the top of their head. That was the only thing that you officially won at the Olympic Festival. And it was incredibly symbolic of the value of the victory itself, of the actual outcome of the event, right? The olive crown wilts in a day. Oftentimes, the victor, the champion, would get the olive crown, and the next day when they were sort of making their way out of Olympia, the thing was already disintegrating. Like, they weren't even able to bring this thing home. They weren't even able to bring home a trophy from the actual event, the most prestigious, important, and significant of all the athletic events, the one that was done at the foot of Mount Olympus for the favor of the gods, directly dedicated to Zeus, the king of the gods. And this, more than anything, helps us understand exactly what Scottie Scheffler is talking about, because he's seen his own olive crown wilt every single time he picks up one of those trophies. Yeah, like the trophy lasts the paycheck is good, but the glory fades. Like the actual accomplishment just dissolves, disintegrates right in front of him. And earlier this year, I forget which tournament he won, but he makes the putt, he wins, and then all of a sudden, like, his wife comes out with his newborn, and he gets to hold his young son, and he's got like the biggest poop stain coming right up the back of his little onesie, which every parent knows. And it's just like, oh, you won this great big golf tournament. Here's a poopy diaper, man. Here's a poopy diaper. And Scottie is just telling us, like, as plain as possible, the poopy diaper is more important than the golf tournament. Like, the poopy diaper is far more meaningful and far more lasting in terms of what is going to sustain him, what is going to make him happy, what is going to fulfill his life, as opposed to like the fleeting triumph of one solitary or a string of athletic victories. So then the question becomes, what is meaningful about pursuing sports at a high level? If the number one golfer in the world is telling us that the outcomes don't matter, should we take him seriously, or should we say you're burnt out? You're missing the point, Scottie. If you just backed off a little bit from practicing and competing all the time, then you would properly reorient yourself back to celebrating the wins. But Scottie is right. This reminds me of another great athlete who not only wins on the court, but has this incredible perspective of the proper context that his athletic triumphs mean. And that's Giannis Antetokounmpo. Oh, I totally butchered your name, Giannis. I'm so sorry. It's one of those names where you have to keep saying it over and over again, or else like you forget the specific way to pronounce it. So I'm sorry, Giannis. But this was from a couple of years ago, and it was the year after he led the Milwaukee Bucks to the NBA championship. And I think his team got eliminated in the first round or the second round. And a reporter asked him, like, do you consider the season a failure? Like, it's a failure because you didn't win the championship. And he turned the question like upside down and put the reporter right on the back, right on the defensive. And he said, like it's not about the outcome. Like, the season isn't a failure if we don't win the championship. Like, there's so much that happens in a particular season. Some things go your way, some things don't. Sometimes the ball bounces for you, sometimes it bounces against you. And if we're only able to look at the direct outcome of our experience, of our journey, well, then we've lost the entire point of what we're doing. And I'm paraphrasing now, but that's effectively what Giannis said. And he said it in such beautiful and articulate English, even though I think that's probably like his fourth language. You're a stud, Giannis. Right? So there's a lot of athletes who understand this ancient wisdom that the ancient Greeks purposefully put into like their most important athletic contests. So then if it's not about the outcomes, what the heck is it about? Why should we try? Why should we care? Why is Scottie Scheffler at the Open Championship right now going for another victory, going for the claret jug? Okay, this leads us to the Ken Dryden book, The Game, and this very important concept that's been like just marinating and stewing inside my mind ever since I reread it. I read this book for the first time maybe 5 years ago. I read it again in between, so this is my third time with this book. And I love rereading books because you just pick up something new. You're in a different place. Something is going to stick out to you that maybe you missed or didn't seem as prescient or salient when you read it the first time. It's kind of like that Heraclitus quote, no man ever steps into the same river twice, for he is not the same man and the water is not the same. So even if it looks and feels the same, it's actually not, because it's different. And this concept in The Game, it's not even like Ken Dryden's concept. And let me just back up a little bit. If you don't know who Ken Dryden is, if you don't know what The Game is, I'll just quickly educate you. Ken Dryden is a Hall of Fame ice hockey goalie. He played for the 1970s dynasty that was the Montreal Canadiens, winning I think he won 6 Stanley Cups or 5 Stanley Cups in his very short 9-year or 10-year career. He's famous for going to law school at the same time he was a professional goaltender. striking these really weird contractual situations with the Montreal Canadiens and with his law school, and also with some of the offices that he was clerking in. So he's always been this really interesting guy. And his book, The Game, is perhaps the greatest book ever written by an athlete about sports. I'd certainly put it up there as the number one, because he has this way of writing and this way of articulating and this way of effectively framing time and the experience of time and memories and the present and the future, and how the game swirls us up and really just brings us into the locker room, onto the ice, into his mind, through his heart, in such a brilliant way. But he's talking about the special player at this point. He's talking about the special player. And the special player he's talking about is Le Blondiment, Lafleur, Guy Lafleur, who was the most electric forward of this period. A Hall of Famer, a legend, an icon, and somebody who played the game with artistic flair, with spiritual passion, and almost with like a reckless abandon of structure and kind of like what the coaches would want you to do. Right? He's one of those special talents. And in introducing Lafleur, as he sort of does all of the main characters of these 1970s dynasty teams that he was a part of, he connects their individual character to a broader character type in sport, and then ultimately to a broader concept in sport. And the concept that he talks about is this Italian concept of sport. And it's called Inventa la partita. If I have any Italians out there and I butchered the inflection, I apologize. Translated, it means to invent the game. Inventa la partita. Invent the game. There's so much on this inventing the game thing. I'm trying to figure out which one of these quotes I want to read from the book. I took so many notes on my phone about this, but I'll just quickly read this one. A phrase often used by soccer coaches and journalists, it is now more often than not used as a lament. For in watching modern players with polished but plastic skills, they wonder at the passing of soccer genius. Pele, Di Stefano, Puskas, players whose minds and bodies in not-so-rare moments created something unfound in coaching manuals, a new and continuously changing game for others to aspire to. Okay, and here's another quote right from the game about inventing the game and what it means to a player who practices this way. Quote, when first learning a game, the player thinks through every step of what he's doing, needing to direct his body the way he wants it to go. With practice, with repetition, movements get memorized, speeding up, growing surer, gradually becoming part of the muscle's memory. The great player, having seen and done more things, more different and personal things, has in his muscles the memory of more notes, more combinations, and patterns of notes played in more different ways. Faced with a situation, his body responds. Faced with something more, something new, it finds an answer he didn't know was there. He invents the game. Just buy this book, read it many times. Unbelievable. Unbelievable stuff. Okay, so what does this idea of inventing the game have to do with the Olive Crown Wilts in a day and Scottie Scheffler saying, like, winning is effectively over by the time I walk off the green? And it doesn't matter. It doesn't mean anything. What is this? What's the link here? The crucial link is internal motivation. The player who invents the game is playing directly from their heart. They are out. Let's take the hockey example. Let's take the Guy Lafleur example, right? They're out on the frozen rink, outside, on the lakes, on the rivers, on the streams, on the ponds. Like, the moment the sun comes up, they're out there. Maybe they got school, doesn't matter. Like, play for an hour before the school bus. Take your stick, play in the driveway, play after school. Guy Lafleur famously snuck into hockey arenas before they even opened so that he could get on the ice when nobody was watching, so he could just play around and be creative and try things, right? And allow the motion of his body to be an expression of his character, of his self, and of his spirit. And we all know players like that. We all know players like that. We've played with them. The person who just like, I'm thinking about soccer, the person who goes everywhere with a soccer ball. They're always juggling. They're always dribbling. You see it with basketball all the time. They've always got a basketball in their hand, dribbling, spinning it around, feeling it, or like a baseball. It doesn't matter what sport it is. They are intimately connected to it, and they're always exploring. They're always creating. They're inventing new ways to do things. Right? In sports, we have like the greatest example of this, which would be like the Forsberry flop. Dick Forsberry in the 1964 Olympics changed high jump forever. I've said this example a whole bunch of times, but go back and look at what high jump looked like before Dick Forsberry. Everybody knows what high jump looked like now. You run up to the bar and you kind of jump backwards with your head first, but that's not how high jump was done. It used to be you would go up to the bar and you go parallel and you do this kind of like scissors kicking motion to get your leg over the bar first. Well, Dick Forsberry came in and he was just practicing. He was just inventing the game and he changed the game. Now everybody jumps like Dick Forsberry. Right? And why? Why is Dick Forsberry? Why is Guy Lafleur? Why are all of these special athletes pushing the boundaries? It's because they desire to. There's some burning passion inside of their hearts that just must be out there and expressed through this physical motion. Even when Guy Lafleur was in the NHL, he had these kind of special allowances about being able to practice longer, about not having to necessarily play the same kind of structured way that the other players did, because to confine his genius would be to rob him of what made him special and what allowed him to be so effective on the ice, scoring 50 goals, I think 6 times in a row or something. Unbelievable, Guy Lafleur. So the crucial link is intrinsic motivation. What Scottie Scheffler is telling everybody is that all the external things are illusions when it comes to sport. None of them mean anything. None of them matter. Not at the end of the day. Records, statistics, championships, money, endorsement. If that's why you're doing sport, you're not going to get anything valuable from it because those are all externally driven. And just like that olive crown, which is externally put on your head, they all dissolve over time. And none of them will be there to comfort you if you've given up what's really important, which for Scottie Scheffler is like family, presence, appreciation. If you just go from outcome to outcome to outcome, you're going to lose yourself because eventually the outcomes will not align for you. Eventually you lose. This is one of the great truths about sports. Nobody wins forever. Nobody wins forever. Everybody eventually is going to lose, right? What's the saying in sports? Father Time is undefeated. So if you live in the present with this wisdom of the future, you're best able to extract out the true value of what it is that you're doing. And here's how we can connect it all the way back to the ancient Greeks, which I've done a little bit, but let's go a little bit deeper. Let's get a little bit more specific. Gosh, I miss history. I used to be a history prof, guys. I used to teach this stuff all the time and talk about it, and I miss it. All right. So if the crucial link here is intrinsic motivation, what did the ancient Greeks think about that? Well, one of the things that I observed as a professor teaching the broad history of athletics was it's a striking link. It's a striking link between the societies in the world that have promoted athletics for their own sake and the unleashing of freedom and flourishing. I'm talking about the classical Greek period, and I'm talking about the Victorian British period. These were the two societies, the two cultures in world history who celebrated athletics for their own sake. So all cultures in the world have a physical culture. It's not to say there's not like sports or there's not physical training, or other societies have not placed an importance on things like physical strength and winning in a contest. But these are the only two societies that divorced and separated those physical physical contests and physical culture from any direct utility, right? So, for example, in the medieval period, you have knights that are doing all this physical training, right? Which some liken to sport, and certainly many historians will call it something like proto sport. But they're training, they're competing against each other in these tournaments, but there's a direct external reason. It's like your social station as a knight. There's money, there's rewards. There's all of these external factors that are the driving, motivating factor. They're not just doing it because. Like, for the ancient Greeks, a running race is important because it is just a running race, right? For the Victorian Brits, you play for the game. They gave us the idea of amateurism, that the best reason to play is simply for the love of the game. And it's not to win, and it's not to lose, but it's to bring out your character. It's to bring out the best of who you are, and it's to test yourself in a crucible that can bring out those elements. And what Scottie Scheffler is kind of saying is that if I'm internally motivated to go after these tournaments, I don't necessarily need the external. And it's this wrestling question because society and sort of like the sport culture at large praises the victory, praises the outcome. But he recognizes this hollow feeling. And he is choosing to redirect himself towards something different. He is exercising incredible agency, autonomy, and ding, 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 freedom. He is exercising tremendous freedom of thought, and freedom of mind, and freedom of conscience. Right? And it's not a coincidence that the ancient Greeks, the Victorian Brits, they centered athletics as a character building activity, that it must be done for internal reasons only, or else you're not going to get what you need out of it. And that activity that's centered in the intrinsic, like that's a love-based activity. And because sports is so powerful in its individual potential, right, in allowing an individual to dream about, viscerally experience, and feel their potential in ways that other activities just cannot, there's this incredible link to societal freedom, to individual liberty, to human flourishing. Like the classical Greek period, we have things like mathematics and philosophy and drama, right? And architecture. All of these like incredible explosions of human potential and creativity. The same thing in the Victorian British period. We're talking about the Industrial Revolution, like the steam engine, railroads, like the dropping of trade restrictions, the Corn Laws, like the emancipation of slaves, the eradication of the slave trade. We're talking about cataclysmic leaps forward in human flourishing and in the celebration of freedom and the dignity and agency of the individual. Both societies cared the most about sports for these internal reasons. Scottie Scheffler is commenting on Rome. He's commenting on the spectacle. He's commentating on the gladiators and Circus Maximus and 250,000 Roman citizens walking in for free to watch death and destruction and chaos and ultimate partisanship with the chariot races. He's saying that stuff's an illusion. That stuff's not real. That stuff doesn't matter. And he's right. It doesn't matter. What matters is something that Charlie pointed out. Big shoe, let's go, bro. He pointed out that even though the external doesn't seem to motivate him, all of that internal drive has affected his character, where Scottie is this patient, laid back, chill kind of personality and character, because that's the way he's learned how to practice golf and play golf. And he cares so much about being good at golf, right? He dedicated his whole life to it. And it's more about becoming the person he was supposed to be able to say, yeah, I win all these trophies, but my family is way more important than any of that stuff. And then to have the courage to expose that truth out to millions and millions of people on the eve of one of the biggest tournaments in the entire world, right? The process of becoming himself through sport is obviously realized. It's obviously there. And that's the value. So when all is taken together, like Scottie Scheffler is kind of inventing the game, is he not? He's redefining the boundaries. He's suggesting you think that this is the meaningful part of the game. I'm going to show you that this is really it. So what ties together like that Guy Lafleur, that Scottie Scheffler, that ancient Olympian? I honestly think it's this idea of self-conquering. Like, this is part of my own philosophy. It's like, why do people get addicted to sports? Why do people get addicted to playing sports? Why do people get addicted to the external signal of victory, right? Because it's an external manifestation of an internal transformation. There's this powerful idea from the Old Testament. Outward consecration reveals inner sanctification, right? So when I dress, when I take special care of ritual, right, it's a reflection of my inner divinity. And effectively what Scottie Scheffler is trying to tell everybody, it's like, hey, these trophies, they only matter because they're a revelation of myself. Like, they don't matter as a totem of my singular achievement. Like, they are representations of my entire being and my entire journey. When athletics become internally driven, they unleash freedom. You get a sense of self, of conquering self, of becoming self that actually means something to you. And that's not dependent on some external reward. Those are hollow. Those are false. What's real is inside. And this maps up beautifully to psychology, but also to some ancient philosophy, right? Psychology is generally, I'll be politically correct as I can. Psychology is generally bunk. I mean, I'm not a big fan of social sciences. I don't believe their epistemology is even valid. And epistemology is like a fancy word for like how we know things, like what is the basis of knowledge. I don't think social science has a sound method. I don't think they have discipline. And I don't think that they can extract knowledge in a very useful or accurate way, apart from simple observation, experience, and conversation. I don't think you can study a human being scientifically. Maybe anatomically, maybe biologically, but even then we get into some squirrely business. So I'm not a big fan of social science. So it's not me just picking on psychology. I'll pick on all of social science. All of it. It's fine. I'm a historian. Come at me. It's no big deal. But psychology, like some of the studies on happiness and like achievement have all kind of focused on a similar thing, which is like happiness is not the end goal. Happiness is the journey. Like happiness is the journey. Nobody is really happy when they achieve their goal. Like, it's exactly what Scottie Scheffler just said. It's like, yeah, you achieve your goal, and then 2 minutes later, it's like it never even happened. Like, we talk about this all the time on the team. You know, we want to ward off the post-race blues because you work so hard. Like, you train, you sacrifice, you go, you travel, you compete, you give everything you got. Like, it hurts. And you cross that finish line. It's like, yeah, I did it. And then legitimately, like 2 hours later, it's like, man, where'd the feeling go? And you actually crash. You actually crash way down. And so we talk about this. Like, we make it openly known that, hey, if you want the contentment and the satisfaction from the race, you ultimately have to locate it in the training. Like, it's not going to come from the race. It never really comes from the race. It comes from the process of building towards the race and executing the race and then taking that momentum towards the next race or the next training block or just the next time you get out and move. Okay? And this is exactly what somebody like, Aristotle was talking to us about. And I talk about the classical Greek age. Aristotle is one of the figures who can help us sew all this up together, One, through his idea of virtue ethics. We're talking about moral philosophy, the philosophy of what's good and bad, which is a very, subjective space in philosophy. There's a couple of broad categories, right? Virtue ethics being one, deontology being the other, and consequentialism being the third. And so deontology is like appeal to the rules. Consequentialism is appeal to the outcomes. And virtue ethics is like appeal to the character. Okay? This is basically how it goes. So sports, morally speaking, when they're good or they're bad, like, is it the consequences? Is consequentialism the fountain of sports goodness? Is it simply just like the winner is good and the loser is bad? I mean, Scottie Scheffler doesn't believe that. I certainly don't believe that. And I don't think most people believe that either. What about deontology? What about just like fidelity to the rules? Like the person that's good is the one that follows the rules and the person that's bad doesn't. Well, that discounts the whole idea of inventing the game. That would suggest like that Dick Forsberry, his imagination, like it's cool, man, but just do what everybody else does, like, because that's what good is. Yeah. And I recognize it's not that simple, but virtue ethics, character, like that's intriguing. Sports are good because they make me good. Sports are good because they give me the arena to exercise good, to learn about good, to challenge myself between good and evil. This has legs. And Aristotle, he has a very important understanding of happiness that maps nicely to the modern psychological understanding, where it's like happiness is the pursuit. Happiness is the journey. Happiness is not the end goal. Happiness is the becoming. Happiness is the improving of self. It is the attainment of virtue, which is to effectively look at a part of yourself that is lacking and to make it better. Like if I'm born super duper smart and I just go around talking about how smart I am, it's like intelligence is not a virtue for me, right? I haven't done anything to earn it. I haven't worked for it, but if I was not the fastest person, wasn't born with elite genetics, but through athletic training, I've disciplined myself, I've practiced, I've learned skill, I've found an enjoyment in the activity. Well, then that does bring me character. Then that does bring me virtue, because now I'm actively working to gain it through an activity. And by me getting faster and faster, I am reaching more and more of my potential, which is in turn inspiring and motivating me to go into the process even further. And like one race, 2 races is not going to be the make or break of that entire journey. And when thinking about Scottie Scheffler, inventing the game, this idea of intrinsic motivation, Aristotle gives us these very two powerful concepts to alert us to the emancipatory power of sport in unleashing that individualism out onto the world in celebration, excellence, and beauty. And these two ideas, these two terms are eudaimonia and ontology. Ontology is my internal desire. Ontology is my internal passion. It's like being directed by my heart. It's the thing that I do even though it's the thing I do because I want to do it. There's no external reward. I'm not doing it because I'm being told or because I'll get something at the end of it. I'm doing it just for the sake of my own enjoyment to it. And then eudaimonia. Eudaimonia is the highest personal good for any individual, right? So that's not to say that there's a universal good that all individuals should aspire to do. It's more like, hey, I'm interested in this. You're interested in that. that interest is a very important signal for us to go hard towards that direction, to aim ourselves there, to orient our foundation towards that place where interest is pointing us towards. So for me, my highest good might be something like running. For somebody else, it may be something totally different. But the thing that athletics can provide, right, when we twin these ideas, when we twin my internal passion to effectively aim at excellence, ontology, and eudaimonia, recognizing the personal good that is the most meaningful and valuable to me, when I twin those two together, the activity that I am engaging in automatically becomes a moral activity. It automatically becomes good because I'm self-directed. I'm acting through intrinsic motivation. Morality is not something that's dependent upon external threat or external coercion. This has to be internally derived. When I link that up with the thing I'm really good at, or the thing I'm really interested in, or the thing that I believe when I go for hardest, I bring a lot of value to the world, I can do both of those in sport. And sport becomes this moral activity of character generation, character growth, character exposition, virtue development, and this example of living fully through the heart. And when thinking now back to some of those quotes from Scottie Scheffler, it's like the mind told me that the rewards would be worth all the sacrifice, but the heart recognizes they're hollow. And I have to lead with my heart. And I have to go with where my heart points me. The heart is still pointing me towards this very difficult thing of trying to compete at the highest level in golf. You know, the mind might say, if Scottie Scheffler's burned out, why is he still playing tournaments? Like, he's made all the money he ever needs. He's already cemented himself likely as like a Hall of Fame golfer, even though he's still pretty young. If he really didn't want it, he could quit. And he could take all the things that he's gotten and earned and he could go do something else. But it's clear he must compete. It's clear like his eudaimonia is competing and the ontology is the desire to do it. So why is he still showing up? Because he needs to. He needs to show up. And that's what's going to give him both like the consternation and like the internal division of like excellence in external goals, but excellence of process for internal desire, right? You could see in his response that he's just wrestling with this. It's not an easy harmony here, Scottie. Like, we totally get you. It's not easy. It's not easy to be driven so powerfully towards something where everybody is going to misunderstand what is actually driving you. Like, everybody is just going to assume it's all those external things that Scottie wants. He doesn't care about those. He just told us he doesn't care, right? So the morality of Scottie Scheffler's sort of pursuit in golf just simply comes down to this internal desire, this twinning of eudaimonia and ontology for his own personal understanding of what he requires in life to be at his best, right? He's able to recognize, like, it's more valuable for me to be a present, loving father and to celebrate my wife who allows me to go out and practice all day, right, than it is to talk about, I won more tournaments, I'm building my external legacy in golf, I'm going after Tiger and Jack and all these things, right? It's because he's playing correctly. He's playing from the heart, right? And what do I say, team? What do I always say? When you play from the heart, it's impossible to lose. It's impossible to lose. Because ultimately, when you play from the heart, you're bringing in internal desire, you're bringing in passion, you're bringing in a sense of internal accomplishment as something that you and only you are being directed to achieve in. And then the outcome is like useless. Who cares about the outcome? The outcome becomes like a data point. It becomes something to think about and then move on. It becomes some information to file back. It does not become the most important thing. It becomes just like a stepping stone in the journey. And it becomes some objective data and understanding that we should then take the feedback from. So when thinking about all of these things together, I think it's rather clear what we all want to be thinking about when we're thinking about sports. And that is this heart-based action. When sports are placed in the heart and then acted through them, the greatest potential of them as an activity for character development, moral development, and individual flourishing, it's obvious. There's no argument against it. Bring it. Bring your argument. I don't think it will fly. But there's so much out there. There's so many external distractions. There's so much consumption, voyeurism, spectatorship, externally derived valuations on sport, especially professional sport. And maybe I'll get into this stuff in another podcast in the future, amateurism versus professionalism and all that fun stuff, getting right back into prof mode here. But seriously, guys, sports are so powerful that we must be able to take a really powerful look at them. Look what happens. Look what sport drives people to do. Think about riots. Think about the millions of people who will flock to watch a championship parade. The people who break their TVs, the people who fight somebody because they got the wrong color on. Sports are these tremendously powerful activities that evoke the spirit. They evoke the animal spirits inside of us, the base elements. But they also can tilt us towards the highest spiritual understanding of ourselves, right? That's what the ancient Greeks were trying to do. Why else have an athletic festival at the foot of the mountain where your gods live and then dedicate the entire proceeding to the most powerful of all those gods? Every single athlete, guys, every single athlete who ever competed at Olympia had to go in front of the statue of Zeus. They all had to go into the temple, and they all had to swear the same oath that they would compete. What? To win riches? No, it was to bring the best of themselves, right? And to be honorable and to have character and moral value and worth. What the Greeks called arete. The most excellent of all the virtues. That's what sport tilted them towards. The best of all virtues. And arete is one of those tricky words that doesn't really translate well. Some people translate it just as excellence itself. Other people translate it as virtue itself. Some give you the idea of the most excellent or the top virtue. The way it's been described most often is this combination of body and mind to aim towards spiritual excellence or spiritual perfection or moral quality. So it's like bringing the best of my body and the best of my mind together to do the right thing. That's arete. That's the best virtue of all. And that's what sports are designed to do. So say the people who created them. So say the Victorian Brits who resuscitated that idea of the ancient gymnasium and made it a core factor of their culture and civilization, to the point where the Duke of Wellington, the guy who beat, Napoleon on the battlefield, has that famous line, right? The Battle of Waterloo was won on the playing fields of Eton. Why were we able to defeat the biggest army, the greatest commander of all time? Because we play rugby, because we play soccer. That's why we win. That's why we dominated the world. And that's why everybody went sport crazy. That's why everybody wanted sports. It's because they saw the British conquering the world, both militarily, but also becoming the biggest economic powerhouse the world had ever seen. And also at the same time unleashing individual liberty. They all give me a piece of that, guys. We need that. We want that. We want to copy you. We want to copy you. So both those societies understood that virtue was the real aim of sport. And I think that's what the whole Scottie Scheffler thing is about. It's about people thinking that pro sports should simply be entertainment, should be spectacle, the athletes, performers, entertainers, justly and rightfully rewarded with riches, celebrity, fame, and legacy. But the real ones know that that is an illusion, and that's hollow. And it's more about what's going on the inside. And I think that's why you're getting a lot of praise, seeing a lot of praise for Scottie Scheffler. Because not only is he being honest, but he's right over the truth. He's right over the truth. And it's not just about sports. This is kind of just about like achievement in general. And people are certainly like making it their own. But, you know, I felt called to try to explain this from my vantage point as somebody who used to teach this stuff, someone who has explicitly asked their thoughts, and someone who's kind of been thinking about ideas and concepts that are salient and prescient to making this point. And given how seamlessly this sort of fit, at least in my mind, maybe it's not so seamless in yours after listening to this, thinking like this guy's just all over the place. Yeah, that could be true. It's fine. It's fine. Podcast isn't a place for concrete conclusions. It's a place for exploration and for swirling around. But that has given me like a renewed vigor to write some of this stuff down and to make a concrete, structured argument, provide my evidence about my own philosophy, which is bringing all this stuff together: the history, the ancient and the modern, the philosophy, the ancient and the modern, the psychology, the biology, the theology. I didn't really get into the spiritual side of this. Maybe I'll just tease everybody. Maybe I'll just tease everybody with that idea right now. And let's just throw in the Old Testament just for fun. Let's just throw in the Old Testament. So one of the striking things about the Old Testament that I think most people miss, number one, because they never read it, but number two, if they do, they never finish it. You know, like, central part of the Old Testament is like the one God emerging out of many. It's like one God emerging out of many. You know, back in that time period, everyone's effectively polytheistic. Then the God of Israel comes, and it's like, no, I'm the one. I'm the top dog. Only worship me. And then it's sort of like played out. The story then gets played out off that. That's one of the big themes. But who is this God? What is this God? What's he the God of? Is he the God of the gods? I mean, that's like Zeus, right? The Old Testament's very clear. And I've heard a couple of different iterations of this or articulations. One I like is from psychologist John Vervaeke, which he says that the God of the Old Testament is the God of the open future, which I like because, you know, the Israelites kind of break time in a sense. Like they break out of the cyclical view of time and then they get into the historical narrative of time. So we end up with a linear understanding of time as opposed to just a circular one. So this idea that the God of Israel is the God of the open future and the God of potential, the God of like individual flourishing, yeah, that makes sense. But it's not quite enough. And the literature and sort of the language of the Old Testament gives us a little bit of a deeper understanding. So who's this God? He's the God of freedom. He's the God of freedom. So the Old Testament God is the God of freedom. Do you now think that an activity that teaches me about myself through the body, which I'm now like instantiated in, like we experience this world through the body. No, I don't want to get deep into your beliefs. Doesn't matter to me. But it's clear like that the body is a very important part of this experience that we have in this world. Whether this is the only experience we have, whether it's the beginning or whether we're in the middle, doesn't matter. I don't care. I'm not here to convince anybody of theology. I'm just here to make some observations. The body is clearly a valuable and important vehicle in us moving through this experience in this world. An activity that forces me into the body so that I can extract spiritual truths about who I am what I desire and how I can unleash that individual freedom out onto the world most appropriately, mediated through my heart. I mean, this does sound like a godsend. Another interesting thing about the Old Testament, the God of the Old Testament is not allowed to directly affect man. It's too powerful. One of the very cool things, it's in the Exodus and in Leviticus, is that if you look at God in the face, so if you see God's face as a mortal, you die. You instantly die. So God can't be like this heavy-handed, effectual presence. Like the loving kindness, which is this beautiful Old Testament word, the loving kindness of God's grace is distributed in his wake. So it's like God walks, and then the waves, the wake that come afterwards, that's what gets affected into humanity. And where does it go? It goes right into the open heart. So God's mercy, grace, and loving kindness, his example, which is related to his nature as the God of freedom, then gets redistributed and placed into the hearts of humans, right? So now, Ontology and Eudaimonia, well, holy moly, these could take on an incredible spiritual potential. Because if God's wake is located in my heart, and I'm now utilizing my heart to power my action in the world through the body, which is also clearly a very important part of this whole thing, well, now we really might be starting to scratch the surface of what sport is, can do, and will be. And I think that's why the ancient Greeks were so careful with it. Like, they tried. They failed. We've tried. We've failed. Like, we've taken the ring of power and we put it on when it comes to the externally powerful motivations and rewards that sport can bring us. And what I want to help everybody do, just like Scottie Scheffler just did, is to bring us back to the source, but update it. Update it with information. Update it with different syntheses. I don't even know if that's the plural of synthesis. Maybe synthesis is just a plural of itself. English is pretty messed up, guys. And that's where we're going to take this thing altogether. But I wanted to take this opportunity to explore a little bit of threading when it comes to a modern viral moment in sports, a formal request from somebody who I admire for their athletic heroism and the way that athletics has created a true legend, but also like a true representation of what's inside. Connecting it back to some of the information that was so important in helping me frame and applied in a living philosophy of this stuff, which now I get the honor and the privilege of, guiding individuals and athletes through my coaching to be able to bring that heart to the front and live that potential, and to bring ontology and eudaimonia and inventa la partita and all of these incredible concepts that are related to passion, play, the spirit, the heart, interest, enjoyment, love, the high vibrations, and to be able to sync that up with theology, scripture, psychology, biology, all these fun things. Man, how exciting is that? So this was a really great opportunity for me to just broadside everybody a little bit. But I hope that this has been a really valuable listen, not just so we can better understand, what's happening in the world of golf with the number one golfer in the world saying like he doesn't even really care about winning golf tournaments. Because that's actually not what he's saying. He's saying he values winning golf tournaments for their own sake, and once that's over, it's like they never even happen. And it's more the process of becoming excellent in golf. Becoming excellent in golf affords Scottie Scheffler the ability to become his most excellent self. And then outside of golf is where it really matters. And that's also something that I teach and coach and mentor people on. It's like once we figure this out in the athletic realm, because it's physical, hint, hint, the physical is super important. Well, then I have courage, and then I have fortitude, and then I have a self-knowing and an assuredness to let me go and extend myself further in other areas. And I could keep swirling around this, courage is famous Aristotle. It's like courage is foremost among all virtues because it's the one that guarantees the other. Another Aristotle quote that I've been swirling around with everybody is, victory over self is the most important victory of all. And sports literally just gives this all to us. Like once we understand it properly and we practice it with the correct intention, which is from our hearts, like I'm telling you guys, the world opens up. And not just the world that we live in, but like the world beyond. We'll save all that for another time. Thanks for listening, everybody. Episode 47 will be coming at you soon. I appreciate all the love and support from you guys. And I set out with a goal to make 52 of these this year. And we're well on our way. And thanks for being along for the ride. Peace and love. Happy training.